computer. Sounds like a plan. We're going to go into our class 115. So we are recording and we are live streaming. So if you hear a ding ding, whatever ding ding, that means someone's ringing my doorbell wanting to come into class, right? They can't, that's the other thing to kind of answer your question. I know I'm getting more and more questions about joining live and those kinds of things. I do request that you email me for a link. I don't just open post a link for the class. The reason is because of security stuff. We don't want Zoom bombers, all that kind of stuff. And I employ a waiting room as well. So that's what that doorbell means is ding, ding, someone is kind of knocking, saying, hey, I'm at the Zoom door waiting for you to let me see what you want me to see. So it's just, we're just trying to be really good about security and privacy and all that kind of stuff. But that being said, even though I say I want you to email me, I give it every time. I never say, no, you can't. So all you got to do is email me the day in the session that you want to attend virtually. And then I will send you an email invitation via Zoom or whatever, Google, it's usually through Google. And all you gotta do then is click on that link. It's a hot link right to the room. But again, like with all the other ones, it only works that day and that time. So like this morning I had virtual sessions, but they were for different classes. So you don't want those links. All right. How was your weekend? Okay, everybody doing well. We're surviving. Believe it or not, we're a month into the semester, 1 month down. We're in week 5. At the end of this week, at the end of week 5, we will be 1/3 of the way done with class. We'll be 1/3 of the way through. So look at that either in a positive or a negative, whichever you feel. 1/3 is not all the way done, but it's a good chunk, right? So we are going to focus today on week 5, believe it or not. So any questions, concerns, issues, you need me to clarify anything back in week 4 or actually anything up until week 5? Is there anything I can be of help on or of service or help you with or any of that stuff, whatever.
I got a simple statement.
Go for it.
I mean, I feel like like 2 pages of content are enough. 2 to 1? For that.
Yeah. Probably not for that subject. Is that what you're saying?
It just didn't seem like it was there for me. So yeah, I just added and hope that.
Too much or too little?
There's not enough content.
In our book. Okay,
yeah, like it felt like to really note take on because it's more of, I was almost going to ask you if I could do like on a subject of my own. Yeah, you could. I said that. But you said it had to be in the classes we're in, and I'm almost.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So it wouldn't be something you're in this semester. Yeah, gotcha.
Like, so I just did it, but I felt like it was short because the content was not there.
Yeah.
But
our book, no, I mean, that's a pretty valid point in the fact that our particular book is not, you may not get those 2 pages per one. Absolutely. But you take a biology book, most college courses are incredibly content heavy within the textbook. Our textbook is different because it's more activity oriented.
Right, I see that.
And now that being said, I wouldn't say you could not use that Cornell style notes 2-to-1 ratio like for lecture or for other things, like if you're watching the videos and you're like, oh wow, because there's where the content will lie. Ooh, English, you think I know which one. But anyways, yeah, no, it's a valid point. And definitely, so for example, I had the opposite effect. Someone was doing it for automotive class and their content was the opposite. They felt like, wow, they needed like 4 pages per content. But, all right, so let me put up on the screen. So we are going to talk about week 5. We've been working active reading strategies. And we introduced to annotating, which is marking in the text. That's one way to be actively engaged. The other one is Cornell Notes. Again, writing on a separate page, having a specific organizational method. Again, both are perfectly fine. You may find yourself leaning to one or the other for a preference of which you prefer, okay? What we're going to talk today is making brain connections. As you know, your task was to read chapter 1 in the textbook. So if you haven't done that yet, I'm officially assigning you read chapter 1 right now. I think it's page 2 through 35. And then I have several resources for you. The class lecture that I'm going to give today, which is PowerPoint based, I'm going to be talking through it for lecture, but I made a recording of it, I don't know, a while ago. So it's an older version, but it's the same content. And then there's also a video on the secret algorithm behind learning. So this article is on the Feynman technique, and it's, if you read it through, I think you're going to find it very valuable, because as the article says, whoops, sorry, I clicked out. As the article tells you, there is a difference between knowing something and knowing the name of something. We live in a world right now, I call it the Google world for lack of anything else, where we have a lot of surface knowledge. Surface knowledge means you know a little bit about a lot of different things, and goodness knows you can always Google about it if you don't know. But the problem is it's preventing us from getting deeper knowledge about things. And if you are going to be successful in any career, you've got to have deep understanding of that content if you're going to be successful. So that's just kind of a warning to you in college that you may be able to skate by the first couple classes or your first semester with surface learning. But if you truly want to make a career at something and you want to be successful in that career, you're going to need deeper level of understanding of that particular content or craft. And I guess for lack of anything else, I would use the automotive industry. I mean, it applies to every field. But in automotive, when you go out and you're becoming a mechanic, if that's your goal, you want to be a mechanic, whatever, you have to have core knowledge. You have to have deep understanding of how engines work and the parts and the interconnecting, and if this is happening, where would I look for those kinds of things? Because if you only have surface learning, you won't last very long in the field, is all I can say. And that's for anything. But anyways, this Feynman technique is great. The bottom line, you're going to hear me say this quite often. If you can't explain it to a kid, you don't understand it. That's always the challenge. If you can't explain something to someone who doesn't know anything about it in a way they understand it, then you yourself do not have a core understanding of it, of how it works. So think about that when you're studying any kind of content or whatever. If you can't do it in your own words or give it to someone else and use a child, if you can't explain it in a child level, then you don't have a good core understanding of that content. And that's not, it means you haven't deeply processed it. So, all right. Activities and assignments, I'm going to talk about those first, and then I'm going to do some lecture. The Feynman technique, I would encourage you to read the article, but then I have a video on it, okay? It's an H5P. Samantha, right? You are the only one I think may have an issue with this. So if you have trouble with this video, it's going to be the same thing. We got to get it in that blue box. We got to get it with the app. If you can do online. Different, okay, or do a different browser, I think was the issue for yours as well. So just so you know, that's an interactive video. The video plays, questions are embedded, and you just need to answer the questions. You'll notice on this video, the questions are not until toward the end. It's same rule as before though. Play the video all the way to the start. It has to go all the way down, and then you have to submit at the end with your answers. The grade will go in the grade book immediately. If you don't see a grade in the grade book, then you know something went wrong. You got to do it again, okay? So this is not a difficult one. It's all about that Feynman technique of deeper understanding and working on your craft. And by the way, when you're working on your craft, you're working on your career, okay? All right. Couple other items. Chapter 1, Making Brain Connections Forum. What I want you to do is post in the forum, this is like a discussion, 5 to 6 sentences, explaining any particular area of the chapter that contained information that might have been new to you. So you're going to pick something in that chapter, like, wow, I didn't know that. Okay, write 5 to 6 sentences on it. Summarize that information within those 5 to 7 sentences. By the way, summarize in your own words, because that is a measure that you understood it. If you can't do it in your own words, you didn't really understand it. Although, keep in mind, if you have to use a key terminology like metacognition, or you need to use synapses or something, you know, I mean, that's fine. And then I also want you to, if you have a question on content, feel free to post it as well. So then the other part of this is you got to reply to somebody. So you post yours, 5 to 6 sentences. Then you got to go in and reply to somebody else. And you can either answer their question that they posted, or you can make comments on their posting. Questions or concerns on the posting? So remember, this is like discussion. This is like if we had a class discussion with everybody. We have a huge number in this class. You only see part of them when you come face to face, because we had to divide them all up. So keep in mind, there's a lot of people in this, and therefore this is the measure of participation. I can give you a heads up, if you're not doing the forums, you're going to have trouble with your grade in the class, because this is 20% of the grade. So don't not post. Do be sure to post. Do you have questions on what you have to post? So you're going to read the chapter. You're going to pick an area. Oh, I didn't really know about that. 5 to 7 sentences in your own word. Pose a question. Then go in, reply to someone's question, answer their question, what they posted, and or comment on their posting. Remember, commenting on the posting means you are furthering the discussion. Okay? And I do give you the criteria, 2 to 3 sentences for your reply. Good on posting for forums? All right. This week you have a test. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. The test is online. You're going to do it on Moodle. It is timed, but it's not a short time. You have plenty of time. Okay? Don't do the test till you're ready, but get it done before the due date. It'll close after the due date. You'll have to email me. And then I usually open it, but you get a late penalty because I give you the entire week. You have until Sunday at midnight to get it done. So, but don't do it until you've read the chapter, you're aware of things, all that kind of stuff. I'm going to talk about this after my lecture, because then I'll show you the format. So I'm going to start with lecture, and we are doing a PowerPoint. And the PowerPoint is all on making brain connections. So I'm going to go to slideshow. This is chapter 1. And the first thing I want you to understand is reading is not normal. If you think about how long it took you to learn to read, does anybody know? Actually, let me flip that. Does anybody know how many years are formally assigned to teaching reading, teaching how to read? Does anybody know how many years are assigned to that? Close, but not quite. You're a little high. We don't dedicate 8 years in the formal education system. Go for it. Yeah, it is. It's 4. After 4th grade is the last year in which you usually have a formal phonics structure of, hey, this letter is this sound, blends, digraphs, where you are reading out loud and practicing. After that, it switches. After that, in our education system, it switches in where we actually use books to obtain information we need to know. So like social study books, science books, whatever. Up until then, if you think kindergarten, 1st grade, 2nd grade, 3rd grade, a lot of that stuff is done orally. You get content orally, experiment. Think about preschool. A lot of what you learn in preschool is through song, through doing, right? You don't read to learn. But after 4th grade, now reading is something you do to learn, okay? And definitely in the college arena, most of your learning comes through reading. You've got to read the textbooks. Big part of this, there's no one part of your brain, there's no one place that's devoted to reading. Reading is so complicated and such a complex structure that not only does it take 4 formal years of education to even touch on it, but then it takes all these connections all over in the brain, making connections with each other to get that to work. And everybody's brain works differently. So although we only dedicate 4 years to formalized instruction, some people it's a lot longer, some it's less, right? Because every brain's different. And reading is never stagnant. You're always continuing your reading level. So what I mean by that is when I'm reading college level text, sometimes it's really hard. The more I read that level of a text, then the easier it becomes, because it's like anything, you got to practice. So your reading level goes up and down. It is active, it is not passive. Remember, most of us, when we think of reading, we think that's it. That's not, that's passive. That's also why you might not remember or understand the information. Because if you're passive, that's not, you're not engaging with it. You're not actively making your brain do what it needs to do. So we've talked about these things before. Active is you purposely do something with the material, whether it be annotating, marking in it. But this particular one is preview, question, connect, outline. This is kind of like the PSR, right? You preview, you get your brain ready. It's like a roadmap. You prime it. You question. Why are you questioning? Turn those settings, because now you have a purpose for reading, okay? And then connect it to what you already know. So the information you're getting, if you can connect it to something you already know, it's kind of like you're attaching it in your brain to something, okay? And then, of course, you always outline, draw, map your interpretation of information. Don't forget to use pictures, subheadings, titles to help keep you connected with what's going on. A big thing I want you to understand is critical reading and metacognition. Metacognition is that $5 word. I guarantee that's on the test. It means you're thinking about your thinking, and it's a very complex thinking technique. You have to kind of discover and take apart the author's meaning, evaluate what's important, what's not important. All of these things are going on while you're reading in your brain. The trick to this is you got to make your brain be aware it's going on and pay attention to what's going on. How many of you have read a page of something and then you can't remember what you read? Yeah. That's because your brain took a little vacation without you. It went to lunch and left you sitting here. It was off thinking about other things, okay? So this is why you want to employ techniques to keep your brain focused on where it needs to be. Do remember, critical reading is not memorization. If you think you're going to be successful in college by memorizing the chapter, reading to memorize, doing things, memorizing information, you are very naive. There's just way too much information. You won't be able to memorize it all. It's more important that you understand it and apply it. Now that's not saying you won't have some memorization involved. And I can tell you for sure, if you're going nursing, you're gonna have to memorize terms and definitions. There's just no getting around that. But if you're taking criminal justice and you think I'm just gonna memorize everything in chapter 1, you will not be successful. Your brain is just not set up that way. So we're gonna do a little practice, active and passive. Raise your hand if you think it's active, okay? If you think it's passive, you don't have to do anything. Reading a textbook chapter from the beginning to the end, straight through. Active? Nope, you're right. It's passive. Here's the trick. Why is it passive? What do you think? Why is it passive? Don't know. Preston.
Because you're not giving your brain a chance to absorb the knowledge, or by taking a break and pausing. And
there you go. You're not chunking.
Yeah.
That's a part of it. Your brain can only handle so much at a time. So if you sit and do too much in one sitting, you're losing half of it, right? The other part is you're not actively doing anything. If you're just sitting and looking at something, you are not actively engaged with what you're doing. All right. How about rewriting your lecture notes? You come to class. Good job. You took a bunch of notes while you were sitting here. Go back to your room and you rewrite them. Is that active? Ooh, about half and half. Why do you think it's active? Go for it, Samantha.
Because you're examining the information that you already went over.
Yes.
In your brain again.
So the key word on this one, I'll be honest with you.
Journaling?
Nope, it's rewriting. So let me kind of emphasize a couple of things. Rewriting means you're doing exactly what she said. You're thinking about it. You're maybe rephrasing it a different way, right? If this said recopy, that is not active. It takes no brain work to recopy. You're not thinking about anything. So let's say you didn't come to class but a buddy of yours did. You say, hey, can I have a copy of your notes? Sure. And you copy over their notes. That is not active reading. It may be a good thing to do because you want the information, but you're not helping your brain at all. The trick to this is you got to rewrite them as much as you can in your own words. That is where you are actively engaged. So it's a little bit of a trick question, and I guarantee that's probably one on the test. That's the word you're looking for. If it says recopy your notes, that is passive. Okay? How about summarizing what you read and creating a mind map? Would that be active? Yes, it is. That is active. If you're summarizing, you're doing it in your own words. A mind map means you're reformatting it in what makes sense for your mind. You're using visuals. That's no problem. How about testing yourself on information in the book? Absolutely active. Here's a trick to this one. You can test yourself in an empty room. You don't have to have anybody there. It's the act of, okay, what questions and do I know them, and being able to address it. By the way, without looking at the book for the answers. That is testing, right? All right. This is what you should be thinking about if you're actively engaged or not. How do you stay actively engaged during lecture? How do you stay actively engaged when you got to read something? Or maybe the bigger question is, do you? Do you actually actively engage during lecture? Do you actively engage when you're reading? So most of us, we lie to ourselves. Sure, yeah, I'm actively engaged. Yeah, I'm paying attention. And you're really not. You're just lying to yourself. So it's always, are you doing anything? What are you doing to keep your brain? And actively engaged means your brain is there. Okay. Good news, you're a natural learner. Your body grows dendrites. Your brain does this. Dendrites, and I'm going to show you a picture in a minute. They connect at related synapses, and then they fire. Okay, you got to wire them together, and then they fire. They're sending messages. Here is a big thing. Just like anything in life, you got to use it or you lose it. So when you learn something new, you got to reinforce it and go over it and review it quickly and often. Otherwise, you'll lose it. You won't remember it anymore. I always use this as like with languages. You know, one time I could speak Spanish, but if you don't use it, eventually it gets rusty and then you lose it. Same thing with math, by the way. If you're taking a math class this semester, that's probably why. You had math, you knew math at one time, but if you're not using it actively, it's eroded and you've forgotten a lot of it. You've lost it. So you got to go back and do it over again, okay? So anytime, this is why when you sign up for classes, this is why you should sign up for a class and leave yourself a gap. After you leave class, you should review that information, rewrite it in your own way in notes, in your own words, reformat the information, whatever, review it right away, because then you're reinforcing those connections in your brain with that information, okay? A lot of students do the opposite. They'll sign up, oh, I want all my classes on a Tuesday or Thursday, and that way I don't have to go on Fridays. Okay, you're back to back with classes, but your brain has no time to process things. And so then by the time you go and do your homework, which is usually Sunday nights at 8 o'clock, you've forgotten half of the stuff. And it's like Greek, and I don't know what to go do, right? It's because you waited too long. The best time, like after you leave this class, you should review chapter 1, and then do the test tomorrow. You shouldn't listen to the stuff today and then not look at it again until Sunday, because it's just harder on your brain is all, okay? Neurons connect, those are called synapses. They connect each other, they form this big neural network. That's what we're going for, this big neural network. It's kind of well connected all over. And let me show you. So this is like a picture of, those little dendrites, those little fingers at the top, the cell body, the axon. This is where information travels, and more nerve endings. So when a dendrite grows, when it starts, it's like this little thing here with hardly anything on it. Think of it as like, okay, you got new information today on how the brain connects, right? I'm giving you information on chapter 1. And then you read, review, you start building, you go over it some more, and you want to keep going. So the more connections, the more information you get on it, the more you understand it. You're building an expertise. This is what you're going for. You want that dendrite to look like that. If you look at this, I think of it as like a map. if you live in a big city, I don't know, Chicago, Detroit, whatever, there's more than one way to get somewhere. There's more than one road that leads to places. You can take multiple paths. And that's what you want in your brain. If you need to retrieve information, you want it to be able to come back on more than one path. Because if one way gets blocked, there's other ways to get that information. This is why you build that, and this is why you want the expertise. Expertise have very well-developed neural networks in that area. So this is why, for example, you go to your mechanic. He has an expertise, and if you say it's making a clunk, 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 just from that information, he can say, oh, it sounds like this, or it sounds like that. And then he'll start addressing and diagnosing. A doctor is the same way. You go to a doctor, you know, I don't feel well, depending on your symptoms, they have a level of expertise. And if they don't have it, so for example, I go to my doctor and I say, well, you know, I don't feel like this. And he's like, well, you know, I'm not really sure. Let's go see a specialist, right? A specialist has a very well-developed neural network in that one area alone. For you, you want your well-developed neural network to be in the career you're going into. So you want to make sure you're continually building information related to that, that's relevant to that career, okay? The good news is it's natural. Your brain loves learning. It is a natural process. It's called the natural human learning process. NHLP, that's the abbreviation. It wants to learn. It knows how to learn. And here's the sequence. There are 6 steps. Step number 1, motivation. Then practice, more practice, more practice. Then there's skill, and then there's mastery. So how are these different? Well, what is motivation? Number 1, what does that mean? I always use that word, and not all students know what that means. Give it to me in your own words. What does motivation mean?
To be able to do something with, you know,
I know, see, this is tougher than you think, isn't it? Yeah, explain it to me like I'm a 5-year-old kid. Hey, Mom, what's motivation?
it means that you have, I want to use motivation to describe.
Yeah, you can't use the same word because I don't know what it is. Go for it.
Something that could be done.
Could be doing?
Huh?
Did you say could be doing?
Keep you going.
Oh, something keeps me going. Okay. So my motivation keeps, I like that. Can you phrase it a little bit more? I mean, like, give me a synonym.
Your will.
Yeah, that's a good word. He's exactly right. It keeps you going. It's your will to keep going. Okay, so now I said your will to keep going. What does that mean? Yeah, you got to want. It's a desire. It's a want.
Mm-hmm.
I always use the example of tying your shoes. Does everybody remember what age you learned to tie your shoes? Give me a shout out. How old were you? 8? Anyone else different? 6? Some were young, some were old. I didn't learn until I was 12. Why do you think that is? I'm not stupid, by the way. I know that's your first guess. No, no. I'm not stupid. It wasn't that.
You just didn't want to do it.
I didn't want to do it. I didn't have to do it. They had this cool stuff called Velcro, baby. Woof, woof, woof. And finally, there was this pair of shoes. It was, at the time, an incredibly expensive brand. It was Nike. Nike, I think, is still fairly expensive. And I really wanted, oh, come on. And the deal was, no, until you can prove to me you tie your shoes, I'm not spending big money on a pair of shoes, right? And anyways, it was within 20 minutes tops at the most. I remember, bam, bam, bam. All of a sudden, I had a desire. I wanted to. I was motivated. That's your motivated. Where does that come in with your learning? If you don't want to, if you're not motivated, it's not going to happen. Talk to students all the time. I really want to pass your class. No, you don't. What have you demonstrated you want to do? How have you demonstrated your will to be successful? Okay. So think about that. If you really, let's say you want to, your career path, you're going to become a nurse. And you're taking a math class and you're not successful in that math class. You're like, you're not going to be a nurse. How motivated are you to become that nurse? You're going to need to pass the math class to get to the nursing class, right? So that's kind of where it goes. You got to want to do something. It's your desire. And then how are you going to do it? How can you demonstrate that? And then there's practice. Practice is messy. Practice is ugly. Practice is uncomfortable. I'm going to make you do things in this class. You're like, oh, I don't understand. Annotating is a good example. What? Why do I have to annotate? I don't see the, it's uncomfortable. Cornell notes. Yeah, I want you to do it this style, organized. The first few times you do it, you're like, oh. But then the more you do it, practice, you gain confidence. You're like, okay, I get what you want. Okay, yeah, okay, you get better at it. Then you get an understanding. You start seeing the links. Oh yeah, the more I do this, I start having success in other areas. I've already had a couple of students who applied the PSR to a chapter they were having a test on, and then they emailed me like, hey, that stuff really does work. I think I scored better because I did this and this. Exactly, that's what I'm talking about. But you got to keep doing it. It's not going to happen probably the first time. You got to keep practicing and doing things. So the more you take notes, the more you do the PSR, the more you're engaged with your stuff, the better you get at it, and it becomes natural. Until finally, your skill is you're getting more success than not. It's natural feeling, and then you hit mastery. Mastery is when you can teach someone else how to do it. Does that make sense? One of the biggest things that is for you in processing information is attention. And you need to learn to manage your attention. There's two kinds: selective attention and divided attention. Selective attention means you're directing your brain's attention to a single task. Divided attention means your brain's attention is on more than one thing at a time. Here's the thing, in today's modern world, we all multitask. Good news is you can. Can you drive and read a book at the same time? Yes, you can. Is it wise to do that? No, it is not. Because your brain cannot give the needed level of attention. It needs to go one or the other on those kinds of things, right? So when students say, well, I can do this, I'm not arguing that if you can. I'm saying science shows your brain does better if you go selective attention. So what does that mean? It means you can't just go through the motions. You got to have your brain engaged in what you're doing. Did I share my lawnmower story with you yet? Okay. I always use the lawnmower story. So I've been married a million years, and for whatever reason, the chores get divided inside, outside. So that means I have to do inside stuff. He does outside stuff. I don't know how or what that happened. I'm not really fond of that, but it is what it is. So consequently, he does the yard. And we have a big old honking yard, by the way. It's really large. And FYI, we got a push mower. Not a rider, a push mower. Okay. Now, he hurt his back a few years back, pretty severely. Like literally, he was on the couch for 6 weeks. We were doing pain pills, the whole 9 yards. He literally could get up to go to the bathroom, but barely, because his back was in so much pain. So he's off work the whole 9 yards. So guess who's on yard patrol? That would be me, right? So we're out there in the middle of summer. It's hotter than Haiti out there. It's like 99 degrees. And I got to get that push mower. I'm like, okay. And he gives me, he's a bit of a yard Nazi. He wants things just right. So I get my instructions. Oh, you got to go this way. You got to line it up right with the edge. And then when you come back, you got to hit it at this angle thing and make sure, follow the tracks. You want to parallel lines. You know, he's giving me a blow by blow. Exactly. So I got to line things up so I have my lines really straight. Okay. I'm good. So I get out there. I am mowing. I've been mowing for probably an hour, sweating like a sow. And all of a sudden I see him on my back patio, literally like hobbling out there, yelling at me. I turn the mower off to hear him. And he's yelling, what the blankety blank do you think you're doing? Loving wife that I am. What the blankety blank do you think I'm doing? I'm mowing your blankety blank lawn. That's what I'm doing, right? And he said 3 words, blades not engaged. So if you've ever mowed a lawn before, you realize that the blades engaged means that the blades are lowered enough that they're cutting grass. Otherwise, all it is the blades are up too high and you're riding on top of the grass. So I'm following those tracks just like I'm supposed to, except the blade's not engaged, which means I'm not doing any cutting. I'm just walking back and forth, making lines, going through the motions. So this is why I use the story, because you got to think about what are you doing when you're studying or reading or taking notes or going to class or whatever it is. Is your brain engaged or are you going through the motions? you're going through the motions, you're not processing information. So this is where you got to be paying attention where your brain, what your brain's doing or what it's not doing, and make it focus and come back to it and come back to it. You got to fight those distractors. There are two kinds, internal, external. Inside things, you know, you're not feeling well, you're really worried, maybe you have anxiety. Those are all internal. Maybe you're hungry. Big distractor. If you are hungry, it's a huge distractor. External are things on the outside, sounds, sights, whatever. Temperature sometimes, okay? How can you fight them? You got to be aware of them first. What's distracting you? Is it internal? Is it external? And then you got to address it. So for example, maybe it's an internal one. You're like, oh man, I'm so hungry. Oh, it's lunch. I didn't do lunch. Well, maybe next time you need to eat lunch before you go to class. Could be the opposite. Maybe you ate a really good lunch and now you're sleepy and you're having trouble focusing. Don't overeat, right? But it could be other things. Maybe it's financial things, worry, anxiety, right? You have to be aware of them, and then you have to work on, okay, what can I do to address those things? One of the big things I always tell students is when you're reading, do the checkmark system. So you're reading a chapter, go paragraph by paragraph, read the first paragraph, cover it up. If you can say what the author wants you to know in your own words, you're good. Go to the next one. If you can't, put a check next to it, reread it again. After you go a few pages, look at how many check marks you have. If you have a lot of check marks, it means you're having trouble focusing and having trouble with your attention. And there's something that needs to get addressed somehow, some way. Okay. Here's a big one. Make a daily reading study plan. You should be doing a little bit every single day. If you're one of those who says, oh yeah, no, I don't have anything to do. I'm all done. Oh yeah, there's something wrong. Something really wrong in your world. Because in the college arena, if you're taking a full load of classes, there is always something you're supposed to be doing. Homework, testing, studying, whatever. There's always stuff. Make a reading plan, study plan. Look at all your courses. Start plotting out when you're going to do your reading. Because we already know the kiss of death, the worst thing to do is sit down and read a whole chapter in one sitting. Your brain is not going to remember half of it. Not a good thing to do. Here's another distractor. Listening to music. I talk to a ton of students who always come to me saying, hey, I want to help, you know, fight distractions, whatever. And so I always start with, okay, what are you doing? Talk to me about what your routine looks like. Well, you know, I put me on some Katy Perry or whatever it is, blah, blah, blah. Oh, stop right there. You're distracting yourself. Believe it or not, we all distract ourselves. We are masters at it. Here's why. Most of us, for us to study for a test, to prepare for a test, it's not an enjoyable experience. It's something we have to do, but we don't look forward to doing. Your brain naturally tries to avoid things it doesn't like. That's natural. So you put on music. It distracts you. Here's the thing. Anything that has lyrics or a human voice singing on it subliminally will distract your attention. Now, some music is good, and that's instrumentals, anything without a voice or a lyric. So classical music, new wave music, there's other kinds of music jazz, I think some forms of jazz does not have, if it doesn't have a human voice singing. But if there's a human voice singing, it is subliminal. You're not even aware that it's drawing your attention away from where it needs to be. So be thinking about that. If you have to have your music on, you just like can't live without you some Katy Perry, then at least have it in the back so it's not in front of you. This goes for computer stuff too. How many of you study from the computer? Okay. Don't have any tabs open except your notes. That's the only tab that should be open. Why? Because it's so easy just to quick tap into something else, look something on the internet, and then you're gone. Your attention's gone. And it's harder to pull it back. Okay? Again, these are things that you're not even aware are going on. They're subliminally. And I also want to really kind of qualify this. Can you study with music playing in the background? Yes, I'm not saying you can't. I'm saying you're just making it harder on yourself. It's going to take you twice as long, twice as much to process that information. Learning is state dependent. Any state that you learn something in, try to replicate that for testing. This is one of the reasons we have classrooms that are kind of bland. We don't have a lot of excitement. We don't do cocktail hour. Testing doesn't happen that way. It's quiet, calm, dull environment, right? But a lot of times if you remember how you heard the information, that's how you can recall it. So think about it, it's like, oh yeah, I remember her saying something about that. And then you can picture me saying it. Question? Or just noise? No? Okay. Pathway effects. Oh, that's what I just talked about. Habits to enhance your reading. What do you want to do? Skim. This is like the previewing. Look at titles, headings. Reread. Why do you reread? Reading is not studying, by the way. Why would you reread something? Why would you go back and read it again?
Repetition helps you learn it.
Not quite. No. Repetition does help you learn, but that's not the same as reading. Say again.
I thought it was bad to reread, so.
Say again?
I thought it was bad to reread, so.
Oh, no. Sometimes you need to reread. Sometimes you might need to reread something 4 or 5 times. I've had stuff where I've had to go back and reread that monster at least 4 times. You read, why do you read? Number one, what's the number one reason you read something? To understand. So if you understand it, then you don't really need to reread it. You reread if you don't understand. Because here's the thing, you can't process anything into long term unless you understand it. If you don't understand it, you got no shot. So that's what rereading is for. You reread to understand. Once you understand, now you have to actively engage, how am I going to get it into processing? That's where if you keep rereading and rereading, like you're studying, like I ask students, okay, how'd you study? Well, I went back and reread the chapter. Well, that was a waste of time. Because if you already understood it, you don't need to reread it. If you don't understand it, you do need to reread. Now, that's not to say you don't go back and pull out parts of the chapter, write it in your own words, make notes, but that's not rereading. You may revisit portions of the chapter, but you're not just rereading the chapter, okay? Pacing and subvocalization. Subvocalization is a fancy name for read aloud. Read out loud. Because then, not only does your brain see it, it hears it. And you got 2 pathways to the brain. Believe it or not, there are 5 pathways to the brain. Does anybody know what the 5 are? Yep, your 5 senses. So in the college arena, FYI, you can only use 3. So you have your 5 senses: vision, auditory, olfactory, that's smell, taste, and then touch, right? Kinetic. In the college arena, we only use 3. Vision, you read things or see things. Hear, lecture, right? Or audio, something like that. And then kinetic, by doing, like mechanics or labs or those kinds of things, right? So until they invent smell-o-vision, olfactory is off the charts for you. We're not in cooking school, so you can't tell anything by smell. Maybe you can tell an experiment gone wrong. The other one is by taste and eating, because I guarantee if you eat the information, it will not come out the way your instructor wants it to, so that's off the plate. So therefore, the more of those 3 pathways, if you can do all 3 pathways, if you can see something and hear it, and you're doing something with it, that's the best way. It's your triple threat. 3 times more likely to get it processed in your brain. Think about that when you're creating your study stuff. When you're studying, use more than one strategy. Don't just use flashcards. Don't just study one way. Try a variety. Try all different ways, all different formats. Make sure you space it out. Doing a little bit over a longer time frame, way better than a long amount in one day. Example, I say 1 day, 5 hours is not as good as if you do 3 days, 2 hours each. Remember, reading information is not studying information. They are not the same. And stay positive. Mentally, If you think you can, you're more likely to succeed. If you say you can't, it's usually self-fulfilling. So you always want to go in with a good attitude of saying, yeah, I can do this. Let me do this. That being said, you can have a good attitude all day long. You do have to prepare or you're not going to get there. But if you prepare well and have a good attitude and positive, much, much higher chance of success. So that is the lecture on chapter 1, making brain connections. I do have the lecture there if you want to go through the PowerPoint on your own again. I also, up here, this is my lecture. It's a video of me talking through the PowerPoint, what I did. The lecture that I record, I think, has maybe a few more details than what I talked about today. Again, I freestyle it every time. I don't have scripted notes. It's all expertise knowledge. I'm talking off the top of my head because this is where I went to school for. But that being said, feel free to ask me questions or concerns. So let's talk about the test. Chapter 1 test. This is what it's going to look like. You can see I already opened up to you. It's open. You can take it at any time. Please notice all this information. You do have a time limit of 2 hours, which means from the time you click in, the clock starts running and it doesn't stop. Don't click in until you're ready. You can't go, come back, bounce. The clock continues to run. That being said, 2 hours is quite a bit of time. It's actually more than you need. I wanted to reduce the problems with, in case you lose your internet or something like that, you'll still have enough time to hop back on, finish the test, those kinds of things, okay? The grading method says highest grade, but you have 1 shot. So the highest grade will be your first grade. So you get 1 time only. I do not give you more than 1 attempt, okay? Oh, wait a minute, what the French toast? Says I have 2 attempts. Well, that's wrong. That is not true. What the French toast, Maynard? All right, let me go in here. Hold on. I'll turn my editing on. Boy, it's a good thing we're going through this, isn't it? I know, you could have had more than 1 attempt if I hadn't been paying attention.
Test last night.
Yeah, you should have got an early start. You could have, yeah, no kidding. Oh, hopefully as I go in, I hope nobody else did, but let's see. They may get lucky, I don't know. We are October 5. We got to go in and adjust our test. All right, let's take a look. Timing. Time limit is 2 hours. Time expires, it's going to be submitted. Okay, grade. Oh yeah, there it is with the French toast. 1 attempt. You only get 1 attempt. Okay, it's all fixed. Whew! All right. So let's go back into the test. Here we go. So same information you noticed. It changes slightly. You get 1 attempt only. It is already open. It's going to close here. It closes, and what's going to happen is you won't see it anymore. It hides it from you. You don't have access to it. In order to get access to it, you have to email me, make it a good one, because I am fairly unmerciful about opening that back up, because I give you 7 days, 5 days, whatever. So take it whenever it works for you. So the quiz looks like this. Mine says preview. Yours is going to say start attempt. Be warned, don't start your attempt until you're ready. Okay? So once you start the attempt, the clock runs. Here we go. So you can see it's going to look like this. The questions are always in green. There are 20 questions for this particular test. They are all on chapter 1. FYI, anything on my PowerPoint, my lecture, and or the chapter is free game. That's where you should be forming your study plan from, okay? Almost all of them are multiple choice. So you will choose what you think is the best answer. You highlight, click on it, okay? If you don't like that and you want to change it, you simply have to clear it and then check the one that you really think. Then again, just like everything else, you go to the next and it will show you which ones you have already answered. And it does not matter. You can go in any order that you want. You can go back and forth, right? As long as when you are done, you have half shades on all of them. So you want to double check when you submit that you haven't left any white. Any that are white, what's going to happen? They're wrong. And it's going to automatically submit if you leave it open. So if you leave it open past the 2-hour mark, it's going to submit, and anything that you didn't answer is going to be wrong. So make sure you just double check that you have chosen something for every single one. When you're done, you simply click finish attempt, and it'll submit, and it'll show you your score right away. You'll know your score right away on this. It is a 2-hour time limit for 20 questions. That is a lot of time. However, it's not enough time for you to have your book open and sit and look to find answers for things if you don't already have a really good base understanding of the information. So you're going to want to have a base. Have your book read, have your notes done, whatever study you're going to do, then open. I do, especially for this first test, I do a little bit longer time because I want to remove that anxiety portion that comes with the time. A lot of people get test anxiety, test apprehension, those kinds of things, and that's why I give you the high time on this. Keep in mind, moving forward, your test will not have as much time. I mean, I won't give you as much extra time. This is our first one, and I want to make sure that you understand how the system works. I've also built in, if you have, like I said, internet issues or something like that, it kicks you off. You have enough? Yeah? No? I don't know. Something I said was funny, or are you just totally distracted looking at something else?
No, I was just
Okay. So my point is, if you have an issue, you should be able to get back on the assignment without any problem with the test, as long as it's within your 2 hours. Good, bad, ugly. So you got kind of a sneak peek at the test. You know what it's going to look like. You know, whatever. I showed you a couple of the questions, so you know how things are worded. Anything else I can help you with or address for either activities or assignments or the test for this week? Okay. Nothing? Okay, I am pretty stringent. You have until Sunday at midnight, but I recommend you don't wait to do it at the end. Because if something happens, I'm not really merciful. That being said, don't do it till you feel ready. By the way, if you have to do it late, whatever, let's say something happens that you didn't get it done, you forgot about it or something, I do open it up, but you get a late penalty. Anything else I can help you with today? I'm going to stop recording.